the anti-war, anti-genocide position, the one that we're always told is so fringe, right, is so radioactive, a guaranteed loser, is just swept a set of primaries and in a so-called swing state. And in the Midwest, this place that we're always told, we're assured that it hates the left, right? You can't have socialist politics there. You can't support healthcare, free healthcare for everyone there. You can't oppose Israel there. They love moderation. They're all just a bunch of white Republican suburbanites that we have to win over, which is obviously not true. But from where I'm sitting, the people, again, who spent $30 million to stop this and lost look a lot more like the Fringe than the guy who just won. And that's because they are fringe and we are not. I had some comments I wanted to make about the Abdul Sayed victory because people who've watched this show and have seen me talk about the Democratic Party know that I am not some rah-rah for the Democratic Party kind of person. But what happened on Tuesday was actually, in my opinion, a political earthquake in Michigan. And I want to talk about that not from even the horse race aspect of it, but just even from a personal aspect of it. Because with Abdul Sayed as the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate, he hasn't become the senator yet. We'll see what happens in November. But he defeated over $60 million used to try to drown him out. 30 million of which came from AIPAC, which has just become so incredibly toxic. When your opponent needs a $60 million crutch and still can't beat you, that's, I think, more than just an individual. That's a movement the money couldn't buy its way past. And I mention a movement because, obviously he's a really impressive, incredible figure as a politician. But I want to emphasize that he was able to win, and a lot of these progressive wins are happening because of the movement that was building in the years leading up to that for the liberation of Palestine, against ICE kidnappings and killings. You can't separate this, especially the genocide in Gaza. The genocide in Gaza has actually shifted electoral politics in the U.S. from the bottom up. And the individuals, the very impressive individuals who do have really great personalities and speak really well and are very likable people, I have to say, they're winning because of that movement building that's taken place over the past few years. And so I don't want to let it be drowned out, the importance of the work that's been done by activists and organizers to get to where we are, and also by all the sacrifice in Palestine. Without that genocide, without the live stream genocide, you would not have this dramatic shift in politics in the U.S. But I also want to emphasize that I am saying this as an Arab American, also as somebody on the left, and as somebody who was in Michigan in 2024. Breakthrough News, we were there covering the presidential election between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump from Dearborn, Michigan. And in that period, in November 2024, Arabs in Michigan were so distraught. There was nowhere for them to go politically. There was literally no one to vote for. People were voting third party, and there's always that. But I just mean in terms of who was going to actually have a chance of being elected, because we have a two-party system, a two-party duopoly or whatever. You had a Democratic Party that was insistent you must turn out, but they were also treating the grief of these people over dead relatives in Gaza and Lebanon, because there was a war on Lebanon at that very exact time in 24. They were treating that as an inconvenience, or in some cases as some sort of necessity to keep genocidal Israel and its supporters in the U.S. happy. So a lot of people either voted third party or stayed home because they didn't, feel like anything they had to say mattered. They felt quite worthless to this political system that was chewing them up and spitting them out and killing their relatives. So you fast forward from that moment of real despair and helplessness, and you fast forward to now, and the anti-war, anti-genocide position, the one that we're always told is so fringe, right, is so radioactive, a guaranteed loser, is just swept a set of primaries and in a so-called swing state. And in the Midwest, this place that we're always told, we're assured that it hates the left, right? You can't have socialist politics there. You can't support healthcare, free healthcare for everyone there. You can't oppose Israel there. They love moderation. They're all just a bunch of like white Republican suburbanites that we have to win over, which is obviously not true. But like from where I'm sitting, the people, again, who spent $30 million to stop this and lost look a lot more like the Fringe than the guy who just won. And that's because they are Fringe and we are not. And for me personally, like I said, like this feels very significant because so much of the coverage of this race between Abdul El-Sayed and Haley Stevens was framed around the Israel question, but that was entirely attached to how it makes American Jews feel. Like, is Abdul the scary brown man who supports human rights for all? Is he going to make Jews in America feel unsafe because of what he's saying about Israel? Like, no one ever asked about how it makes Arab Americans feel to constantly have these like AIPAC wind-up dolls who want to just keep committing genocide against our families be elected. And like as Arabs in the US, we spend our entire lives watching our native countries and our relatives like get bombed or live under occupation and just get dragged through the racist mud by elected officials and disgusting media personalities. And then we get smeared as bigots for daring to object to that. Like you bomb my family and then I'm the extremist for protesting. So Abdul like spoke to that and it's more than just, oh, it's so exciting to have an Arab win. Like it's not just representation here. This man ran on a platform of literally opposing genocide, opposing even defensive weapons to Israel, by the way. And defensive weapons is a stupid term because there's no such thing as a defensive weapon. And opposing specifically the destruction of Lebanon. And also, wanting to divert the money that we're spending killing people abroad to give me and my friends and loved ones healthcare, which, he sees as a basic human right. That feels like a watershed moment for Arab Americans and really for anybody who is not a psychopath to have a U.S. senator that makes challenging this machinery that enables and justifies genocide in the Middle East like a central part of his politics is incredible. This guy seems to be willing to confront the system that just keeps murdering and dehumanizing our communities and has been doing it for generations. So that's exactly why the smears are coming in. You have Mike Pompeo. I don't know if you saw this, the former Secretary of State, not some random, online troll, posting that Abdul is a Hamas supporter. Now, Abdul is somebody who's called Hamas evil. Like he's condemned them. This is why I say the condemnation game never works. It doesn't work to condemn. But regardless, like that's what he's being called. He's being accused of being Al-Qaeda. He's being accused of, being like by his now opponent, Mike Rogers, of being a terrorist communist. So get ready for them to crank up the racism big time. That's definitely going to happen even worse than it is from the right. And then I also want to show the more sort of polished version of the same move, because this is how the sort of respectable corporate media is going to be treating him from here on out. I want to play a clip from CNN. This is the day he won, I guess. Katie Collins of CNN asking him the same question over and over again. Let's hear it.
Can you clarify for us what your position is on funding for Israel if you do become a U.S. Senator? Are you opposed to all funding for Israel, period, military funding?
I'm opposed to unconditional military aid for any country. That is Israel, yes, but that's also Egypt, where my family immigrated from. That's Pakistan, that's Saudi Arabia, that's UAE. And that's not because of a focus on what's happening anywhere except for a focus on what's happening here. We've got communities in my state where the median income is $14,000, and I believe they have a right to their tax dollars. I also believe in international law and upholding international law, and there are Leahy laws against dealing arms to countries who are engaged in human rights abuses. And I don't want to fund a foreign military that does genocide, apartheid, or has taken us to a war we don't need to fight. I believe in equal rights to peace, dignity, and self-determination for Jewish Israelis and Palestinians alike. I believe our responsibility, though, more than anything else, is to use our tax money here in Michigan to provide healthcare in Michigan, and schools in Michigan, and roads in Michigan, rather than to send it to a foreign government that might use it in the form of bombs and tanks to destroy infrastructure and schools and hospitals there.
Some people might hear that and say, well, does he support, funding defensive systems like the Iron Dome in Israel? Do you?
I don't believe that there's really a difference between offensive or defensive weapons. And I also don't believe it's my responsibility to buy defensive weapons for a foreign government when our kids are defenseless against schools that have been underfunded for a very, very long time. My responsibility as the next senator from Michigan is children in Michigan, rather than thinking about what's in the interest of a foreign government.
Okay, so that's a yes, that you are against funding to things like the Iron Dome.
I am against it in large part because I just don't understand why anybody thinks it's the right thing to do to send our tax dollars abroad to fund foreign militaries when our own kids barely get to go to schools that are functional.
So there you have it. There's the same on repeat over and over again. And that's what you're going to see. You're going to see the same treatment. It's all about, why don't you support giving all of our money to Israel? I don't understand. And he's on point. He's on message. This man just won the Senate Democratic primary. And all she could do was ask him about Israel and the Iron Dome and Israel and the weapons to Israel. And also, so are you saying yes, you support not? It's just it's like a cartoon watching that. But, you know, we're going to watch this for the next several months. And I also want to say, like, what I'm not saying here is that I think the Democratic Party is somehow the answer to everything. At the end of the day, I'll say what I always say. This is a corporate party where movements have historically gone to die. A party that usually changes the person and not the other way around. I'm not saying that that's guaranteed for everybody. I don't think that like revolution is going to become through electoral politics. All that said, I think that this is a net positive to have an anti-genocide healthcare for all candidate winning such an important race, because it's like not the cause of the shift in the country. I think it's evidence of a shift in the country. These wins, again, they reflect where people are, not the other way around. The people moved first. The candidates are catching up. Abdul himself, you know, has even said that he's not a socialist. Okay, and that's fine. Say you're not a socialist, whatever. That's not really the point. A race like this cracks the ceiling open. It creates space for the next candidate, the next demand, the next thing we're told was impossible to make it into the mainstream. And I want to go back again. In 2024, it felt like we had nowhere to go. The encampments had died down. There was the crackdown was coming. Then Trump becomes president. The crackdown gets harder. But in 2026, we're seeing all of that movement building be, again, reflected in electoral politics in such a significant way that isn't over yet. And I cannot wait to see how far this reverberates, whether it's inside of the electoral political system or even beyond, and how big the movement continues to get for the liberation of Palestine and for more progressive leftist policies across the US, because the stakes couldn't be higher. Like, we're dealing with a ruling class, a segment of the ruling class that is openly fascist. And this is in the midst of a dying American empire that isn't going down without a fight. And they're trying to kind of take the whole world down with it because it's still an incredibly powerful country. So it's kind of like the future of the world depends on America not being a psychotic fascist state, because that would be even more dangerous than, you know, it already is. So I'm just curious your thoughts, if you have anything you'd like to respond to, or if you have anything you want to say about these recent elections.
No, I agree with you 100%. What's really interesting, which you pointed to, is, you know, a few years ago, AIPAC funding was basically a guarantee for any political candidate. Like, there was no way that you could defeat this like tens of millions of dollars that any candidate received from AIPAC. And in just a few short years, it's now become the total opposite. It's become completely toxic. It's become a political liability, to the point that if AIPAC supports a candidate, they have to fund their money through a different PAC. They have to fool voters into voting for this candidate because they're backed by a progressive sounding PAC, right? And that's exactly what happened in this Missouri race, which, you know, I kind of want to bring attention to. The one that actually bucks this trend that we're talking about of this progressive wave. And that's the one where Cori Bush, progressive person from the movement itself, she was defeated for the second time by this more conservative Democrat named Wesley Bell. And he was the AIPAC-supported candidate. He received almost $10 million from AIPAC, but in the form of their political action committee, which is under the name of United Democracy Project, right? And so I think, one line of attack, and I want to mention this, one line of attack against Cori Bush that was lobbed at her from Wesley Bell was that he kept saying that she focused too much on Israel. He would say, over and over, she's talking about an issue that is not impacting folks right here in St. Louis. And he is quoted as saying, and while we take those issues seriously, the M in Missouri doesn't stand for Middle East. It stands for Missouri. And this was a very similar line of attack that Haley Stevens lobbed at Abdul Sayed, right? That he talked way too much about Israel. He talked way too much about international issues, that those issues don't really impact your typical voter in Michigan. I just think that's so condescending, not only out of step with the Democratic base, but so condescending and such an insult to your intelligence, Like, they really believe that you only care about your own bread and butter issues, that you only care about receiving free healthcare. You only care, if you care about progressive issues at all, you only care about the cost of groceries, taxes, rising rent, only if it affects you. But you have no interest in, the fact that we're bombing school children in Iran, that we are backing a genocide in Gaza for over 3 years. They think that you can't make the connection between these billions of dollars that we are throwing into this war machine to kill people overseas, make that connection between the billions of dollars that's being drained out of social programs and, SNAP, and all of these other programs that benefit the American people. They think that you can't make that connection. And I think it's just such an insult to our intelligence, and completely out of step with the American people. But yeah.
Yeah, they think everyone's dumb. That's a really good point. They think everyone's too stupid to put 2 and 2 together. Like, the fact that all this money is going to destroy everything abroad is not connected to your gas bills.
Right, exactly.
Like, as if people can't recognize that. And also it's like, I'm going to sound so like, this is kind of a lame thing to say, but it's true. Americans are actually pretty nice people. And if they know that they're doing harm, like, not everyone, but a lot of people, if they recognize that there's harm being done in their name, they become morally opposed to it. So it's like, yes, people do care about their grocery bills and they do care about inflation, but and this is all connected. Like, what's happening over there is connected to the bread and butter issues, absolutely. But people are also just disgusted with genocide. And even if not a single American was impacted negatively by killing babies in Gaza or in Tehran, like, a lot of people don't want their government to be doing that, even if it doesn't impact them. So it's super interesting. I didn't know that was the attack line. And I guess one thing I would credit Abdul Sayed with, and I don't know if Cori Bush also just didn't get the same amount of attention too. And of course, like, it's a different district, it's a different space. And there's like different amounts of different kind of money going in for this or that ad. But Abdul Sayed did a really good job of constantly bringing it back, even in that CNN interview we just like watched. He did a really good job of bringing it back to, why are we spending money over there when everything over here is literally like falling apart?